afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Blumenthal with ETHOSystems. We'll be getting started in about 30 seconds here. So we're going to give it about 30 seconds to get started. Well, perfect. I want to thank everyone today for joining our webinar on Sage Intacct dashboards and list views. As mentioned before, I'm Stuart Blumenthal. I'm the Intacct Practice Director here at ETHOSystems, and we're going to be having some fun learning about the different types of what you can do with list views in the system, and then also the dashboards. This presentation is going to be recorded and is available afterwards if anyone has any questions. So just a quick logistics, the presentation is going to be about 30 to 45 minutes. As mentioned, all the phone lines are muted, and if anyone has any questions, please use the questions feature within the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar located in the panel there. If you want to copy this presentation, since there are some good little bit tidbits of information, please put your email address, or in the questions feature, just put your email address and say request webinar, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the PowerPoint from today. Before we get into the actual contents of the list views and dashboards, just one quick thing that just to let you know that 2021 R2, that's Sage Intacct's version 2021 R4 is going to be released on November 12th. That is next Friday. So late in the evening, they will be kicking everyone out of the system, and they'll be updated. Will be there. There's a URL that we provided in our email, but also it's up here. I know it's kind of long. Again, that's why if you want to copy the PowerPoint, we can easily provide that. But you can get see all the different features that have been added to the system on that release. Another good release from Intacct at that point. So list views. So what are list views? And some people ask what those are. And that's simply when you go into any screen, like a vendor screen or a customer screen or bill screen, any screen which has a list, those are list views. And one of the things that people commonly ask are, how to customize them, and what is the best way to navigate within them. And what I always tell people is that people think about list views as kind of like a lookup list, but in a lot of ways, they become a reporting tool. It's something that allows you to quickly report upon things. You can filter based upon things, and then you can export that to Excel. So in a way, it's a quick query that for reporting purposes that people don't think about as a reporting tool. And it's one of the things I always try to tell people. There's a couple tips when you're dealing with list views, and we're going to go over those tips, and then we're going to go into a real life example of that. So the first thing is that when you're working in the different levels of Intacct, so remember, Intacct has a top level, and then we have the different entities, depending upon how your system is configured. When you're in the top level, one thing I always recommend is clicking the box, include private. If you want to see something for all the different entities. So if there's a bill that you just can't find and you forget which entity it's in, go at the top level, click on include private, and then you can search for all the different entities at that point. Also, when you're in the sub-entity, you can click on include top level transactions, which includes those top level transactions. So again, that little checkbox at the top, include private, is sometimes very helpful from that aspect. The second thing is that a lot of times people want to create a new view. They simply say create a new view, and it's great, but it's kind of overwhelming because you don't know what's there and what's not, and you don't know what to choose. What I always tell people to do is when you're in the default view, which you'll see this little word all, ALL over on the left-hand side, what you do is the best thing to do is click on Save View As. save it as something, and then modify the existing fields that you want. That makes it much easier. And then instead of starting from scratch. And then the last tip for today, or actually two more tips, I apologize. If you ever need to remove a custom view, sometimes people create them and then there's no magic delete button underneath there. That is actually found in the customization services or platform services. You click on custom views and then you can click on the delete button, which would be over here on the right. You can delete those any views, custom views you've created. So again, if you make them there, you have to go to a different area within the system to delete them, but it does make it really nice that if you do make a mistake, you can get rid of them, or if someone doesn't like them anymore, you can get rid of it at that point. But there's no magic delete button on that screen. Trust me, I've hunted and pecked for that for many times and could not find that. And last but not least, when you are looking for fields, one of the things that we do here at Ethos is that we click on the feature, the Control F within your browser, which is the search feature, and that lets you find fields. So for example, if I was looking for the word due, like amount due or vet total due, something like that, I might put the word due up there and it highlights all those field names. This is just a great feature when you're searching, when there's a lot of information on a website. And again, use this all the time for when we're creating custom list views. So with that, what we're going to do is do a little demonstration of that. And then once we're done with that, we will go into dashboards. So I'm going to change over to that browser, which is this one here. And you can see that I'm in my list view right now for AP and for bills. So this is the one that's out of the box, and it's great. But it doesn't give me everything that I'm looking for. What I like to add to this is like the amount due. See, I see that they have the base amount, but I don't see how much is due in here. So something that you could easily do, again, we're going to start off with here under Manage Views, and I'm going to save View As, and I'm going to create this one as my balance due. So it shows that information. Now we can call these whatever you want, but again, remember this is a name that everyone's going to see moving forward. So just keep that in mind, that if you make this a little bit of an interesting naming convention, it's something that everyone who's using Intacct will see. So I'm going to say balance due. I'm going to hit save at this point. And at this point here, I can now come down here, choose my balance due here. And it looks pretty much identical, and because I did that save as, and now I can modify it by clicking on the edit button up here. So what this is going to do is going to bring me into my 5 steps of modifying these views. Now don't be overwhelmed. I mean, the 5 steps are pretty straightforward here. The first thing that it's asking us is, what are we adding? And what I can do is I can add in fields. For example, again, I can hit that Control F and I can search for something like due. I was doing this in my browser, so it remembers my last search. I'm glad that's what came up. But I'm going to say total paid, and I'm going to say total due. So I'm able to put in a few fields here. Notice there's a lot of fields, and depending upon the screen, you might see other information here. So a lot of times for customers or vendors, you're going to see a lot of additional fields underneath here. So I'm going to hit the good old next button here. At this point, you could also just simply gone down to the next one. The next one, which is great, is the sequence of order. So if you don't like the order sequence, you can change it. Now, there are certain fields like the little hyperlinks you cannot change. So apologize for that. That's a known issue. We have requested that from Intacct multiple times, but we can't do that. So what I'm going to do is a total amount, and then I'm going to put the total paid up here. I'm just dragging that information up there, and total due at that point. I'm going to hit the good old next button at this point here. And the next thing which we could do is we could do filters. So for example, I could say, show me where my balance due, total due, total due is greater than, for example, is greater than 0. So this would get me an open report of all my open AP invoices. Pretty cool. I'm not, and you can do, and you can really have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete the filter here, and unfortunately, I'm just going to delete it all. And actually, none. Just put that back to none. Sorry. And then the next thing which we can do is, how do you want this to sort? So right now it's sorting by date. Some people like that, but you could also sort this by vendor or by bill number, things like that. So you do have the ability to create multiple. Now, if you do put this one as descending here, it will first sort it by date, then by bill number. So it does put in the order here of the order that you have it listed here. And then the last thing here is, do you want to deploy this? Meaning, do you want this to be available for everyone? So I'm going to click on the good old deploy button and hit save. Now, when I came back in here, notice that it defaulted to that view. So my balance due at that point here. And now you can see how much have they paid and how much is due on each one of my bills. So here again, I could have filtered based upon that information. You'll see that I really, to be honest, I haven't been paying any of my bills in this system, but you can, again, see how you can modify that. So again, things like the print, reverse, view, edit, you cannot change where they're located. And sometimes they do something weird where they move over a little bit when you do modify those. Again, there's not much we can do regarding that. Also keep in mind that when you're in any of these views here, you can start typing for things. So for example, if I'm looking for the word Jackson, I could just simply come in here, and you could have multiple filters within here. So if I want to say, show me where, for example, and the bill number is 3345, you can get that information very quickly. Other things you can do in here is, for example, if you're looking for a word in here, if you put the little percent sign and look for the word heat, for example, you'll see that it pulled up anything. So that little percent sign is kind of like a wild card. Easy way of finding things in there. So if you're not sure if it contains a certain word or not, or vendor name, just put that little that it'll search within the term itself. Some people get a little frustrated by typing that little percent sign, but it does solve a lot of problems. It makes it easier. So I could have done anything now. For example, if I knew it's like ends with 45, anything that had a 45 in there would obviously show up. So again, you can do that for a lot of the other fields and things like that. The last thing that I will point out in this screen here is that you can have a lot of fun. So for example, I can go to my advanced filters where I can say, again, these fields here, so show me where the amount due is greater than, for example, it's greater than, and we're going to put in $10,000 at this point here, and I'm going to click on the good old apply button at this point here. So now I've filtered based upon that, and I can see all those higher bills. So again, keep that in mind that you can click on advanced filters. Now, one of the things I don't like is that it doesn't give me an indication when I'm on here that you have a filter in here. So again, if you're not sure, you can't find something, make sure there is no filter. Click on advanced filters. If you just want to clear it, it clears the filter, and then you're golden at that point. So a couple of tips and tricks about list views. Again, I love this as a reporting tool, and the reason for that is you can come over here and export this information right to Excel, which almost every accountant in the room loves, and so that's an easy way of handling that. I know I've gone a little fast, but make sure there's no questions in the chat window regarding list views. Otherwise, we're going to jump into dashboards. So perfect, silence is golden. So I'm going to jump back into our presentation here. So one of the things that I really find frustrating is that when we see client systems that don't have a dashboard when they go into the system. So for example, if I go back to my system, just for example, one of the things I loved when I come in the morning is be able to see a dashboard. And so for example, you'll be able to see quickly, I've got a dashboard of a bunch of reports. I've got my financials information in here. I've got some charts. I've got some collaborate, which I'll talk about momentarily, lists and things like that. This is something that when you first come into the system, this is really this is where you should be going, and having all this information presented to you right when you log in. And we find that a lot of clients with their home screen looks just like this. And that's not bad, but it's not what I would prefer if I was using Intacct. And in fact, we use Intacct internally here at Ethos. So just keep that in. So that's not what I like. I like seeing a dashboard right when I log in. So with that, the things that could be added to a dashboard are, one, charts. And the charts can be put into different formats. So you can put them into, for example, into bar graphs, and you can put them into pie charts. And you can see all the different types of charts that you can be adding to the system. The charts can be colorized. And again, there's a lot of information where the information can come from multiple different sources. The next thing, which you saw at the top of mine, is something called our KPIs. They call them performance cards. So again, KPIs are known as performance cards with Sage Intacct. This is a quick way of looking at financial and non-financial indicators. So for example, for here, what's our profit margin? How many active jobs do we have? And you can put little symbols like to do comparisons. Are you up or down? Are you can make them a smiley face or a thumbs up or thumbs down. Like my kids do with texting. You can do arrows. It really depends upon how you want those to show those indicators very quickly at the top. One of the things that people ask are usually what are the key indicators that we recommend, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but looking at the sample dashboards that we have within Intacct is a great way of getting started with that. But think about in your business what would make sense, on a daily basis. Is your cash flow going? Are your number of customers increased? Do you have anything, for example, number of late orders, things like that? There's things that you can create those little indicators at the top of the dashboards. And one of the other things to keep in mind is that a dashboard, different people can have different dashboards. So you're not, for example, the controller dashboard could be different from the purchasing dashboard. And we'll talk about that momentarily. Other things that could be added are any type of lists. So for example, you see that I was creating my customer list. You can add financial reports, which whenever you see them in blue, that means you can drill down into that information, which is pretty cool. We can also add custom URLs. So for example, if you are for example, I always love adding the Sage Education one right to the dashboard there so that you can find that pretty easily. You can add your ETHOSystems implementation board there. So it will link you right to our implementation dashboard. Or you can do external reporting services. So like, for example, couple clients, we've had to do some reports outside of Sage Intacct, and we can use products like SQL reporting services. You're able to put that URL into there. So that linking is really makes it easy to stay again in one product instead of having favorites within your normal dashboard. Another feature that you can add on here is something called your Collaborate, where you can start seeing your stream that's associated to you. For those who are not familiar with Collaborate is a free, and I'm stressing the word free, tool that lets you keep notes about any type of transaction in the system. So if I make a change to a dashboard, I can make a note about that. If I'm looking at a journal entry, I can make a note about that and send those notes to specific individuals. Hey, why was this transaction made this way? Or why was this done this way? And I can even put in supporting documentation within there. It's a great feature within Sage Intacct. Definitely recommend using that and getting that set up. We use it internally. So again, how do companies use it? We use it internally for our collection notes, for example. So any invoice, if someone's not paying an invoice, I've asked that they put the notes within Collaborate. That way we can see what's going on. And we've got full documentation. So when I drilled into the AR report, I can click on that. It brings me into the invoice. Then I can, at the bottom of the invoice, you'll see the Collaborate feature. If you don't have it set up, please contact your Intacct consultant. Usually you would just set it up in your production environment, but again, please make sure you contact your Intacct consultant if it's not been set up. Last but not least, one of the last things that can be added to any dashboard is the some general items. Like, for example, you can they've got some things like closed through summary report, like for your modules being closed. You can have a calendar entered into there. You can add. There's a one of the nice things is that Intacct will tell you when new features are coming out. There's a little video on that and a little blurb, and you can add that to your dashboards as well. So again, there's other things you can add under the Generals tab within the dashboard. So as you can see, I like to do a lot of tips. And so I've got some tips here that I will go over, and then we'll go right into the dashboard itself. So a couple tips. First of all, if you want to change a dashboard, don't go in there and just modify it if you don't know what you're doing. Best thing to do is when you're in a dashboard, click on the little copy feature. It looks like two pieces of paper that allows you to make a copy of it. And that way you can test your changes out without doing things. Second of all, your permissions are dictated at the dashboard. So once you give someone access to dashboards, they can run each dashboard unless you restrict them to a specific dashboard. So, and I always tell people, don't give rights to people to run the dashboard until the dashboard's 100% ready. Same thing for financial reports for those who went through our financial report training. Use Collaborate to document the changes you made on the dashboard, and I'll be showing that. And one of the features that they do not have is that if you make a dashboard in, like for example, in your implementation company, you can't copy that to production. It has to be manually recreated. Or if you made it in production and it can't be copied to implementation unless you copy over the entire system. But there's no way to move dashboards from one environment to another. I wish there was. It's just not available. So it's one of those things I've asked year after year. Tip number 2, again, there's lots of dashboards. So for example, as a controller, I'm going to come in and look at certain information versus maybe a consultant who might want to look at, or a technician or a project manager that might want to look at something else, versus someone in purchasing might want to look at a different dashboards. So remember, everyone can have a different dashboards. A couple notes on that. Don't put everything into one dashboard. You know, when it scrolls down, people are not going to review everything. So make your dashboards clean. I personally like them on one screen. I don't want to scroll down. It's, to me, the easiest way to look at what's going on. They're drafted out before you start creating it. What am I looking for in there? Draw it out in Word, or like note, or hand draw it on a piece of paper. And if you need help, talk to your Sage Intacct consultant. And then last but not least, we can provide you, as you can see in my little screenshot here, I've got tons of dashboards from demo environments. And so I'd be happy to share this with you. If you're interested, just let me know and we can provide them to you. The next trick is that once you have these dashboards, make them your homepage. One of the things that's important is that you can go into the preferences of your user and set your homepage. Again, if you by default, it will be that generic Intacct screen, but you can set the dashboard or a specific screen to be your start page. And then I forgot to put the little presentation demo here. So with that, let me go into and show you a little bit of things about dashboards. So again, I'm going back to my Intacct at this point here, and we're at the top level, and I'm going to go into my dashboard here. So got my dashboard that comes up. Now these can refresh. You can set the refresh rates and things like that. But let's just go through a few things here. So as mentioned, these are our KPI, our performance indicators. So you can click on this little button here. I mean, you can click on some of these things here. Like for example, this refreshes that information right then and there. This is showing me that this one is filtered, and that's why that button is, that's why it's showing me there. It's being filtered. And so you can create certain filters up here. So for example, I can filter based upon dates, locations, or jobs. You can specify this in the setup of the dashboard. When you're in any of these like things here, the other widget looks like a little gear. You'll see that in a couple of different areas. If you click on the gear, it's going to bring you into the settings of that specific dashboard item, not the whole thing here. So for example, this is looking at the project. The title is the project profit margin. It's showing as whole numbers, so you could choose the number range. You could choose which book it's coming from, the reporting periods, what should it be comparing to, and again, what are we looking at? Performance cards here. And this is what it's looking at is that a lot of these are already built in, like the project profit margin. These are a lot of things, these account groups that are built in and that will help you create these very quickly. Again, we can also create filters, so we can create filters based upon certain information. Any of my other reports, for example, again, I can click on the gears right here. This will take me right into the component settings. Or if I click on the little pencil, it actually brings me into the ability to edit that report. Like for a report, I can now click and edit that at that point. Again, same thing. If I scroll down to my graphs, you'll see that they're a little bit different. For example, my graphs are right here, so I can edit the graph. In my edit my graph, this is where the data is actually coming from. And you can see, this is my graph builder here. And these are my different types. I could have changed the way it looks. So if I want it the other way, I could have flipped that on the side. Very easy to do that. You do also have, again, your gear ratio here, your little gear, where, again, the size, the title, things like that are within here. Also, one of the other things you'll see is that there's a little button that says, you can say, okay, great, open this up in a new window. So when you do like the collaborate, that will bring that into a new window. You can see, like, for example, I'm asking myself a question, please attach the supporting documents for this. And if you ever use collaborate, you'll see here in the upper right-hand corner, the ability to click on the note. You'll see anything in your collaborate feed in the upper right-hand corner. So with here, again, these are our filters. You have the ability to add components. So if you click on the little add component, this will take you through a wizard. And again, you get to choose, and this list should look very familiar to what our PowerPoint are. Is it a chart? Is it a performance card? Is it a record, a report, a smart link like a URL, a collaboration feed, and then the general aspect? And you get to choose what you're doing at that point. I'm going to leave this here. Again, that duplicate button we talked about, and then the second to last thing, the dashboard settings. This allows me, again, the overall dashboard settings here. For example, trying to stretch that out. How many columns do I want in there? Are they flexible with, how does it flex in terms of when it enlarges and shrinks? Again, what filters am I going to have at the top of this? So these are my filters, and we added the filters based upon our different dimensions. So we can see here location and job, things like that. You can also put in dates as a filter as well. And then again, this is where you set the permissions of who can get to it. And again, as I mentioned before, one of the other features is really nice is the ability for collaboration. So I can mark a note in here that says Stuart. And one of the things you'll find is that if you start, actually the cool thing is if you start putting an @ in here, this is where it starts linking people's names together. But I'm just going to say, I modified this report or this dashboard on 11/4/2021, and just share that. So now I've got a message shared to here once it saves. And this would, it will be shared to this file information here. There we go. So it just took a second. I'm not sure why I did that, but keeps my little picture over there. And it says I modified this report. So at least I've now audited who did what. And again, you could do this collaborate throughout the entire system. Last but not least, right up here in the upper right-hand corner, you can see, you see your name. If you ever click on your name and click on My Preferences, one of the things that we can do here is when you scroll down again, and there's a lot of things you can set up under your preferences, just FYI, it might be something you might want to take a quick look at in your system. But again, what is your start page? So again, I don't have to always do dashboards. I prefer that, but that's up to you. And then what dashboard are you going to be starting with? But again, you can even choose the order of the menu items. You can personalize the number of items per list. There's a lot of things you can personalize for your individual stuff here, and including your collaboration picture is underneath here. So pretty cool with what you can do within here. And by the way, you'll see up here that since I wrote a little collaboration thing, it says, I've got a little one next to that saying I have one thing in my collaboration feed. I'm going to go back to my dashboard here real quick. And with that, and the last thing you can do is you can always print these out. So you can make this a printable view. This what it's going to do, and it's not as pretty, I'll be very honest, but this is something that you could send out to you people through a PDF or something like that. So that's one of the things you can do. If you want to get all this information out, you can make that, click on that print button up top. So with that, we've been going for about a half an hour, and I always try to keep this open-ended for questions or comments or concerns. Look at the notes here. So one of the questions is that what in terms of dashboards, can you provide samples? And yeah, again, I'll be happy to send samples over to you. Just simply put your email address in there, and I'll be happy to enter that into the system. I would send you sample dashboards. We can do everything from, for example, in this demo system, I have everything from financial ratios. So here's just a sample of like a controller one, for example, to a cash analysis one. But I've got other ones that deal with contracts, and ones that deal with nonprofits. We've got a bunch throughout the system. So great question. Again, we'll be happy to provide you those, because I think the one struggle we find with most clients is they say, I want a dashboard. And we ask them, what do you want on that dashboard? And they go, I don't know. And that's why, again, for us, creating the dashboards makes a big difference. Give you some samples is a great starting point. So thank you for that question there. And the last question, is there any charge for this module? No, this is all built in. So everything we're showing you is part of your subscription. So there's no additional charges, additional modules. This is all part of your built-in system. So again, another great question there. So with that, let me just go back to our PowerPoint here. So our next webinar, just to let you know, and again, be happy to send you the PowerPoint, you should have gotten an email as well, is that we will be doing our 1099 and year-end processing one on December 9th at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Try to move this one up a little bit earlier in the day. Registration is required in order to get into there. So if you want to attend how to do 1099 processing, for those clients that are new to the system, this will we'll also go through the closing out of modules, things that we recommend at the end of the year. So just keep that in mind as well. That's what we're going to be going over. If you're not live yet, it's still good to kind of listen in and see how you're going to do it next year. So that's what we recommend from that aspect. So again, if there's any questions along the way, please feel free to use the questions feature. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you for today's time. Everyone's been got some great questions out there, and hopefully this was well worth your time today.